I walked into my own kitchen to find my husband feeding pancakes to my sister while she sat on the counter in nothing but his t-shirt. The syrup bottle was still in his hand, frozen mid-drizzle, and the look on his face wasn't guilt. It was annoyance, like I was the one interrupting something. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stood there in the doorway, still wearing my coat from walking the dog, and watched my sister pull the collar of that shirt higher up her neck like she was trying to hide hickeys instead of covering herself. The shirt I bought him for our 3rd anniversary, the one with the little anchors on it, because he said he missed the ocean. "Sophie," my husband said, and his voice had that flat tone he used when he was about to explain why I was overreacting about something. "It's not what it looks like." My sister laughed, actually laughed. A weird, breathy little sound that made my dog press against my legs like he was trying to hold me up. "Then what is it?" I asked. My voice sounded far away, like someone else was speaking. "Because from here, it looks like you're wearing his shirt and he's feeding you breakfast in my kitchen." "Your kitchen?" My sister slid off the counter, pulling the shirt down her thighs. "That's interesting. You've only lived here for 2 years. We grew up in that house for 18. But sure, your kitchen. I should have known then. I should have seen all the signs that have been piling up like unopened mail. But when you trust people, really trust them, you don't look for evidence that they're burning your life down behind your back. You just keep living, assuming everyone else is living honestly too. That was 6 months ago. 6 months since I learned that the 2 people I loved most in the world had been loving each other in ways that didn't include me for almost a year. 6 months since my husband explained very calmly that my sister and he had just connected on a different level, and that he hoped I could be happy for them eventually. Be happy for them. I spent the first month after that in my childhood bedroom, because my childhood home was the only place I had left. My mother tiptoed around me like I had a terminal illness. My father stopped making eye contact altogether. Neither of them would say my sister's name. Neither of them would say my husband's name either. But that felt less like loyalty to me and more like they just didn't know how to process that both of their daughters had been in love with the same man, and only one of them knew about it. My sister didn't come home. She moved in with him, into our house. The house I picked out, painted, decorated, planted herbs outside the kitchen window. She slept in our bed, cooked in my kitchen, probably wore my clothes when she ran out her own. I knew this because mutual friends sent me screenshots of her Instagram stories. There I'd be, in the background of someone else's life, my things becoming hers, my history being rewritten. The first time I saw a photo of them together, posed in front of the fireplace where we took our Christmas cards, I threw my phone across the room and shattered the screen. My mother came running, found me on the floor, and just sat down next to me without saying anything. She held my hand while I cried so hard I couldn't breathe. Then she helped me pick up the pieces of my phone and ordered me a new one online. "He was never good enough for you," she said quietly, and I wanted to believe her. But it was hard to feel like anyone thought I was good enough when the person I married chose my own sister over me. The second month was rage. Pure, burning, let me drive my car into their living room rage. I screamed at my sister's voicemail until her mailbox was full. I wrote letters I never sent, drafts of text messages I deleted before hitting send, long notes on my phone about everything I should have said, should have noticed, should have done differently. I went through every memory, every holiday, every family dinner, and tried to find the moment it started. When did he look at her differently? When did she start laughing too hard at his jokes? When did the 2 of them begin existing in a private world that I wasn't invited into? I found it eventually. Christmas, 2 years ago. My sister had just broken up with someone, some guy from work whose name I've already forgotten. She was sad, drinking too much wine, and my husband sat next to her on the couch with his arm around her, letting her cry into his shoulder. I remember thinking how sweet he was, how lucky I was to have someone so kind, so willing to be there for my family. He wasn't being kind. He was being present. There's a difference. By the third month, I stopped caring about them and started caring about me. That sounds like one of those inspirational quotes on a coffee mug, the kind of thing people say when they don't know what else to offer. But it was true. I got tired of being the victim in a story I didn't write. I got tired of crying in the shower and waking up with puffy eyes and having people look at me with that awful pity face that says they're glad it's you and not them. I moved out of my parent house and into a tiny apartment in the city. It was on the fourth floor of an old building with no elevator and radiators that clanked all night, but it was mine. I painted the walls yellow because yellow is supposed to be optimistic, and I needed all the optimism I could manufacture. I bought a used couch from Facebook Marketplace, and a bed that arrived in a box, and a coffee table that wobbled unless you put a coaster under one leg. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Therapy helped. My therapist had this way of tilting her head when I said something particularly sad, like she was a golden retriever trying to understand why humans cry. She asked me questions I didn't want to answer. What did I get from staying with someone who made me feel small? Why did I need his approval so badly? When did I start believing that being chosen meant being loved? I didn't have answers. Not at first, but over time, pieces started clicking into place. I grew up in a house where love was performance. My parents loved us, sure, but they loved us more when we were successful, happy, put together. My sister was always better at that than me. She got better grades, had more friends, dated more interesting people. She was a golden one, the one who glowed, and I was just her younger sister, following behind, hoping some of that light would reflect onto me. When my husband chose me, really chose me, proposed to me, married me, I thought I'd finally won. I thought I'd gotten something she didn't have, something that proved I was just as good, just as worthy, just as deserving of love. And then she took that too. It wasn't really about him, my therapist said. It was about her. It was about a lifetime of competing for affection I shouldn't have had to compete for. It was about a system that pitted us against each other instead of teaching us to support each other. It was about a family that didn't know how to love without comparing. I started to understand why my sister did what she did. Not excuse it, never excuse it, but understand it. She was also a product of that system. She also learned that love was something you took, something you proved by winning. I was just the person standing in her way. That didn't make it hurt less, but it made it make sense. The fourth month, I got a new job. It wasn't anything glamorous, just a marketing coordinator position at a small nonprofit, but it paid enough and the people were nice, and it gave me somewhere to go every day that wasn't my yellow apartment with the clanking radiators. I threw myself into it, stayed late, volunteered for projects no one else wanted. My boss noticed. She started giving me more responsibility, more visibility, more chances to prove myself. I also started running. I don't know why running, except that I needed to move, needed to feel my body doing something other than lying in bed staring at the ceiling. I ran along the river near my apartment, early in the mornings before the city woke up, and I watched the sun rise over the water and thought about how the world kept turning even when mine had stopped. I ran until my legs burned and my lungs ached, and I couldn't think about anything except putting one foot in front of the other. In the fifth month, I met someone. His name was Daniel. He worked at a coffee shop near my office, the one I went to every morning for an iced latte with oat milk and 2 pumps of vanilla. I'd been going there for weeks before he spoke to me, just handing over my card and taking my drink and leaving without really seeing anyone. But one day he wrote, "Have a great day," on my cup in Sharpie, and I looked up and saw him watching me with this small, hopeful smile. He was cute, not in an obvious way, but in a way that grew on you. Curly hair that he pushed back constantly, glasses that were always slightly crooked, a laugh that sounded like he was genuinely surprised by his own amusement. He was 26, 4 years younger than me, and he was working on a novel he wouldn't let anyone read. He lived in a studio apartment with a cat named Beans and a collection of houseplants he kept accidentally killing. We started with small talk, then longer conversations. Then one day he asked if I wanted to get a drink after his shift, and I said yes before I could talk myself out of it. The date was nice, easy. We talked about books and music, and where we grew up and what we wanted from life. He didn't ask about my marriage, and I didn't offer. It felt like starting over, like being someone new, someone who hadn't been broken by the people she trusted most. We kissed at the end of the night. Just a small kiss, soft and tentative, like we were both testing whether this was real. It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't earth-shattering. It was just nice. And nice, I was learning, was actually pretty valuable. We kept seeing each other. Slowly, carefully, neither of us rushing toward anything. He came over to my apartment and helped me fix the wobble in my coffee table. I went to his place and met Beans, who hissed at me and then fell asleep in my lap. We cooked dinner together, badly, and ordered pizza when the pasta turned out gluey. We watched movies and talked until 3 a.m. and fell asleep on his too small couch with our legs tangled together. I didn't tell him about my sister. Not yet. I didn't know how to explain that level of betrayal without sounding like I was broken, damaged, someone to be handled carefully. I wanted him to know me as I was now, not as who I'd been when my life fell apart. But he found out anyway. It was a Saturday afternoon, maybe 2 months into whatever we were doing. We were at a farmer's market, holding hands, eating strawberries from a paper basket, when I saw her, my sister, standing at a booth across the way, looking at honey, holding a jar like she was actually considering buying it. She saw me at the same moment. Our eyes met, and for a second, neither of us moved. Then she looked at Daniel, at our joined hands, at the strawberries, and something shifted in her face. Not guilt, not shame. Something else. Something I couldn't name. "Who's that?" Daniel asked, because he wasn't stupid. He could feel the tension radiating off me. "My sister," I said. My voice came out flat. "The one who—" I couldn't finish the sentence. He squeezed my hand. Didn't say anything, just squeezed, like he understood everything I couldn't say. My sister started walking toward us. I thought about running. I thought about dragging Daniel away, disappearing into crowd, pretending I hadn't seen her. But my feet wouldn't move. I just stood there, holding his hand, watching her approach. "Sophie," she said when she got close. She looked different, thinner, tired. There were circles under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun that looked more defeated than casual. "Emma." I said her name like it was something I was trying to identify, not someone I'd known my whole life. She looked at Daniel. "You must be the new guy." "Daniel," he said, polite but guarded. He didn't offer his hand. "I'm her sister." She said it like it meant something, like the words still held weight between us. "I know who you are." His voice was still polite, but there was an edge now, a protectiveness that made my chest ache. Emma nodded, like she'd expected that. She looked back at me. "I've been wanting to talk to you. For months. I just didn't know how. Talking would require you to actually say something." I was surprised by how steady my voice was. "You haven't said anything. Not a word. Not an apology. Not an explanation. Nothing. You wouldn't answer my calls. You stopped calling after the first week." She flinched. "Good. I made a mistake," she said quietly. "A huge mistake. I know that. I've known it every day since it happened. You made a choice." I shook my head. "Don't call it a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to buy milk. A mistake is sending a text to the wrong person. You didn't make a mistake. You made a series of choices every single day for almost a year to betray me. Daniel's hand tightened on mine. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Actual tears running down her cheeks, dripping off her chin. I wanted to feel something. Pity, satisfaction, anything. But I just felt empty. I know, she whispered. I know what I did, and I know I can't take it back. But I need you to know that I never meant to hurt you. It just happened. Don't. My voice cracked. Don't stand here and tell me it just happened. You don't accidentally fall in love with your sister's husband. You don't accidentally move into her house and wear her clothes and sleep in her bed. Those are choices. You made them. She wiped her face with the back of her hand. He's not my husband anymore. We broke up 2 months ago. The words landed somewhere in my chest, but I couldn't feel them yet. I don't care. He was terrible to me. Once we were actually together, once we didn't have to hide, she shook her head. He was cruel, Sophie. The way he talked to me, the way he treated me. Like I was a prize he'd won, not a person he loved. I know that's what you probably wanted to hear, that he was awful to me and I got what I deserved. And maybe I did. Maybe this is exactly what I deserve. Maybe it is. I pulled Daniel closer, not away from her, but toward me, like he was an anchor keeping me from floating away. But that's not why I'm glad you're not together anymore. I'm glad because it proves what I already knew. He wasn't capable of loving either of us. He was just capable of making us compete for his attention. Emma nodded slowly. I'm sorry. I know that's not enough. I know it will never be enough. But I'm sorry. Okay. That's it? Just okay? That's all I have right now. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone I used to love. Someone I used to trust. Someone I'd spent my whole life measuring myself against. Maybe someday I'll have more. Maybe someday we can figure out how to be in the same room without me wanting to scream. But not today. Today all I have is okay. She nodded again, wiped her face one more time, looked at Daniel, then back at me. You look happy. I am. Good. That's good. She stepped back, like she was giving us space, like she was the one who needed to retreat. I hope you stay happy. I hope he's good to you. He is. Okay. She echoed my word, and I wondered if she even realized she was doing it. Okay, I'll go. But Sophie, if you ever want to talk, really talk, I'm here. I'll always be here. I didn't respond. I just watched her walk away, disappear into the crowd, become just another stranger at a farmer's market on a Saturday afternoon. Daniel pulled me into a hug, right there, in the middle of everything. He wrapped his arms around me and held me while I shook. I wasn't crying. I don't know what I was doing. Shaking, trembling, vibrating with something that wasn't quite emotion. You okay? He asked against my hair. I don't know. That's okay, too. We stood there for a long time. Long enough that people stared. Long enough that the strawberry juice dripped onto the ground and attracted bees. Long enough that I started to feel like maybe I was going to survive this after all. The next few months were strange. Not bad, just strange. I'd spent so long being the victim, the wrong party, the one everyone pitied, that I didn't know how to be just a person again. A person with a job and an apartment and a boyfriend, and a life that didn't revolve around the worst thing that ever happened to her. Daniel was patient. More patient than I deserved, probably. He didn't push me to talk about my sister or my marriage or any of it. He just let me exist, let me figure things out at my own pace, let me be sad or angry or quiet without trying to fix it. He was the first person who didn't treat me like I was broken. I started to notice things, small things at first, then bigger ones, The way he remembered how I took my coffee, even though I'd only told him once. The way he texted me photos of beans doing stupid things just to make me smile. The way he never made me feel like I was too much, too damaged, too complicated. The way he looked at me like I was exactly who he wanted to be looking at. I've forgotten what that felt like. Being wanted, being seen, being chosen not because I was convenient or because I fit into someone's life, but because I was me. In October, Daniel's novel was rejected by another publisher. His 15th rejection, if I was counting, which I was because he told me about every single one. He was devastated, more than he'd been for any of the others, and I watched him try to hide it behind jokes and deflection, and I'm fine. Really, it's fine. I didn't let him hide. I showed up at his apartment with takeout and a bottle of wine, and a willingness to just sit with him while he felt whatever he needed to feel. We ate on his floor because his table was covered in rejection letters he'd printed out for some reason. He told me about the book, really told me, for the first time. It was about a man who loses his wife and learns to communicate with her through a radio that shouldn't work. It was sad and strange and beautiful, and I made him read me parts of it while we drank wine and his cat sat on my feet. Why do you keep trying? I asked him. Somewhere around the bottom of the bottle, 15 rejections. Most people would have given up by now. Because I don't know how to stop. He shrugged like it was simple. Writing is the only thing that makes sense to me. The only thing that feels like mine. Even if no one ever reads it, I have to keep doing it. It's not a choice. I thought about that for a long time. About the things we do because we have to, not because we choose to. About the difference between passion and obligation. About whether I'd ever felt that way about anything. I don't know what my thing is. I admitted the thing I have to do, the thing that feels like mine. Maybe you haven't found it yet. Maybe. I leaned against him, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me. Or maybe I spent so long being someone else's thing that I forgot to figure out my own. He kissed the top of my head. You've got time. I did have time. That was the thing I kept forgetting. I was 30 years old, not 80. I had decades ahead of me. Decades to figure out who I was and what I wanted and how to be happy. The last few years have been terrible, but they hadn't destroyed me. They just rearranged me, forced me to grow in directions I hadn't expected. In November, my mother called to tell me that Emma was moving away. Some job opportunity in another state, another city, another life. She was leaving, and my mother wanted to know if I wanted to say goodbye. No, I said. And then, because I could hear my mother's disappointment through the phone, I'm not ready. Maybe I'll never be ready. But forcing it won't help anyone. She's your sister. I know. I closed my eyes, leaned against my kitchen counter, watched the yellow walls glow in the afternoon light. She's always going to be my sister. That doesn't mean I have to pretend what she did was okay. She's sorry. I know that too. But sorry doesn't undo anything. Sorry doesn't fix the year I spent feeling like I was going crazy because I couldn't figure out why my husband didn't want me anymore. Sorry doesn't give me back the trust she destroyed. Sorry is just a word. And right now, that's not enough. My mother was quiet for a long time. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. I failed you, both of you. Your father and I, we raised you to compete instead of support each other. We didn't mean to, but we did, and I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry that you grew up thinking love was something you had to win. I didn't know what to say. I'd never heard my mother apologize for anything. We're proud of you, she continued. The way you've handled this, the way you've built a life for yourself, the way you've refused to let this destroy you. We're so proud. Thanks, Mom. I love you. I love you, too. We hung up, and I stood in my kitchen for a long time, looking at nothing, feeling everything. Then I called Daniel and asked if he wanted to come over. He said, yes, of course. Always yes. And I realized that was part of why I loved him. He always showed up. The holidays came and went. I spent them with my parents, without Emma, without my ex-husband, without the weight of pretending everything was fine. It was strange, being with just them, being the only child in a house that used to hold two. But it was also peaceful. We ate too much food, watched too many movies, didn't talk about the elephant in every room. On New Year's Eve, Daniel and I stayed in. We made dinner together. Actually made it successfully this time, and drank champagne from coffee mugs because we didn't own flutes. We talked about the year behind us, the year ahead, all the things we wanted to do and see and become. We made out on my couch like teenagers, and then we fell asleep tangled together. And I woke up on January 1st with my face pressed against his chest and his heartbeat under my ear. I thought, this is what it feels like to be happy. Not perfect, not problem-free, not without complications. Just happy. In February, Daniel's book was accepted by a small press. A real press. With a real contract and a real advance and a real publication date. He called me from work, screaming into the phone, and I screamed back. And then I drove to his coffee shop and kissed him in front of everyone, and we went out to celebrate with people who loved us. At dinner, his friends asked how we met. He told them about the coffee shop, about writing on my cup, about the slow build from strangers to something more. He told them I was the first person who believed in his book without reading it, who believed in him without condition, who made him feel like he didn't have to prove anything. I watched him talk about me, watched his face light up, watched his friends smile and nod and obviously adore him. And I thought about how different this was from my marriage. How in my marriage, I was always performing, always trying to be enough, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. How with Daniel, I was just me, and that was enough. I love you, I said, right there at the table, in front of everyone. He stopped mid-sentence, looked at me, smiled that crooked smile that made my heart do stupid things. I love you too, he said. I've loved you for a while. I was just waiting for you to be ready to hear it. I was ready. For the first time in years, I was ready. Spring came, and with it, more changes. My job turned into a permanent position with better pay and actual benefits. Daniel's book went into production, and I read every draft, every revision, every version of a strange, beautiful story about grief and love and radios that shouldn't work. We talked about moving in together, just talked. No pressure, no timeline, just the idea of it hanging between us like something we might reach for when we were ready. I stopped running. Started yoga instead, because running was about escaping and yoga was about being present. I learned to breathe through discomfort, to hold poses even when they hurt, to find stillness in the middle of chaos. My therapist said this was growth. I said it was just me learning to stop running from myself. In May, I got an email from Emma. It was long, longer than anything she'd ever written me, probably longer than anything she'd ever written anyone. She told me about her new life, her new city, her new job. She told me about therapy, about finally understanding why she'd done what she'd done, about the years of competing with me for affection she didn't know how to ask for. She told me she was sorry, really sorry, not just for what she did, but for who she'd been. She told me she missed me. She told me she loved me. She told me she hoped someday I might be able to forgive her. I read it 3 times, cried twice, put my phone down, and picked it up again more times than I could count. Then I wrote back. I told her I wasn't ready to see her. I told her I might never be ready. But I also told her I was glad she was getting help, glad she was figuring things out, glad she was becoming someone who could write a letter like that. I told her I loved her too, even though it was complicated, even though it hurt, even though part of me would always associate her with the worst year of my life. I told her that maybe someday, when we were both further along in our healing, we could try to find our way back to each other. She wrote back the same day. Just 2 words. Thank you. I showed Daniel the emails. He read them quietly, handed my phone back, pulled me into a hug. How do you feel? He asked. Tired, sad, hopeful, all of it. That's okay. It is, isn't it? He nodded against my hair. It's all okay. Whatever you feel, however you handle this, it's okay. You're allowed to take your time. I thought about that for a long time afterward, about time and healing, and the difference between forgiving someone and letting them back in. I didn't have answers yet. Maybe I never would, but for the first time, I was okay with not knowing. Summer arrived, hot and humid and full of life. Daniel and I went to concerts and farmers markets and late-night movies in the park. We took a weekend trip to the coast, just the 2 of us, and walked on the beach and ate bad seafood, and made love in a hotel room with sheets that smelled like bleach. We talked about the future, really talked about what we wanted and where we were going and whether we could get there together. We can, he said, lying next to me in the dark, his hand on my stomach, his breath warm against my shoulder. If you want to, I want to. I wanted to. Good. He kissed my shoulder. Then we will. It was that simple. Not easy, not guaranteed, not without work, but simple. 2 people choosing each other every day, not because they had to, but because they wanted to, in August. Almost exactly a year after I walked into my kitchen and found my world collapsing, I sat on my balcony and watched the sun set over the city. My city, my life, my choices. Daniel was inside, making dinner, singing along to music I couldn't quite hear. My dog, a rescue I'd adopted in the spring, slept at my feet. My plants, which I'd finally learned to keep alive, lined the railing. I thought about that woman, the one who stood in her kitchen a year ago, frozen, watching her sister in her husband's shirt. I barely recognized her anymore. She was so scared, so small, so sure that her life was over. She didn't know that it was just beginning. She didn't know that the worst thing that could happen would also be the best thing, because it would force her to become someone new. I wasn't grateful for what happened. I'd never be grateful for that. But I was grateful for who I'd become because of it. Stronger, wiser, more sure of what I wanted and what I deserved. Less willing to settle, less afraid of being alone, less dependent on other people's approval to feel worthy. Daniel came out with 2 plates of food, handed me one, sat down next to me. What are you thinking about? He asked. How different my life is now. How different I am. Good different. Yeah. I leaned against him, felt his arm wrap around me, felt the solid warmth of him against my side. Really good different. We ate dinner on the balcony, watching the last of the light fade, talking about nothing and everything. Later, after we cleaned up and the dog had been walked and we were lying in bed with the windows open to catch the breeze, I told him the whole story. From the beginning, from the kitchen, through the months of despair, through therapy and running and learning to be alone. I told him about Emma's email, about my response, about the hope that maybe someday we'd find our way back to each other. I told him about my ex-husband, about the wedding we'd planned, about the honeymoon in a place I'd never get to see. He listened, didn't interrupt, didn't offer solutions, just listened. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. That's a lot, he finally said. Yeah, you've been through a lot. Yeah. He turned toward me in the dark, found my face with his hand, traced my jaw with his thumb. I'm sorry you went through that. I'm sorry anyone hurt you like that. But I'm also really glad you're here. With me. Like this. Me too. I love you. I love you too. We fell asleep like that. facing each other, breathing each other's air, existing in the small space we carved out for ourselves in this enormous world. The next morning, I woke up early. Daniel was still asleep, his face relaxed, his arm thrown over my waist. I watched him for a while, just watched, feeling something expand in my chest that I couldn't name. Then I got up, made coffee, sat on the balcony with my dog, and watched the sunrise. The city was waking up around me, cars starting, birds singing, the distant sound of a train. Life continuing, life moving forward, life full of possibilities I hadn't imagined a year ago. My phone buzzed. An email from Emma. I opened it slowly, not sure what I'd find. But it wasn't dramatic. It wasn't an apology or an explanation or a plea. It was just a photo. 2 photos, actually. One of us as kids, maybe 5 and 7, dressed in matching Easter dresses, grinning at the camera with missing teeth. One of her now, in her new city, holding up a sign that said, "Thinking of you." No words, just the photos. Just a reminder that we'd once been something before we became this. I saved them both. Didn't respond. Didn't know if I ever would. But I saved them, and that felt like enough for now. Daniel stumbled out onto the balcony, still half asleep, hair a disaster, squinting against the sun. "Coffee?" he asked. On the counter. He grunted, disappeared, came back with 2 mugs. Handed me one, sat down next to me, leaned his head on my shoulder. "Who's that?" he asked, nodding at my phone. "My sister sent me old photos." "That's nice." "Yeah." I looked at the photos again, at those 2 little girls who didn't know what was coming, who hadn't yet learned to compete or betray or break each other's hearts. It is nice. We sat there, the 3 of us, me, Daniel, my dog, and watched the city wake up. The sun got higher, the day got hotter, the world kept turning. And I kept sitting there, breathing, existing, being exactly where I was supposed to be. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't the life I'd planned. It wasn't what I thought I wanted. But it was mine, all mine, and that I'd finally learned was enough.